Now it's time for Viking Mail Call, a weekly show where you, the fans, get to ask the questions on your mind and have them answered by former Minnesota Vikings linebacker and coach, Pete Bursich. And now your host, Tom Moore.
Welcome, everyone, to a Windy City edition of Vikings Mail Call. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and I'm joined by my co-host, former NFL linebacker and now game day radio color analyst for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete Bursich. And I got to tell you, Pete, it must be a special time of year for you as you go back to where you grew up in Chicago to see the 4-2 Vikings take on the 2-4 Chicago Bears.
Well, I'd like to see them both be undefeated. Just growing up there and being a Bears fan as a kid. It'd be nice to get that 7-year in a row loss in Chicago off our backs as well. It's been since 2007, Adrian Peterson's rookie year, where I believe he had about 254 all-purpose yards. He just came through and not single-handedly won the game, but he refused to be denied. I think he didn't know any better. He was just a rookie at the time, and so. Nothing better than being in that stadium and that atmosphere and winning a football game. It's been a long, long time.
You mentioned the field, Soldier Field there, and that's obviously where they play this weekend. But why is that stadium such a house of horrors, not only for this squad, but really all the way back to you, other than some of those late 90s games? Soldier Field's a hard place to win a game.
It is. When we used to go there, it was the old Soldier Field, which the original Soldier Field, it was basically an enormous track. Mm-hmm. And the most people to ever see a football game was in Soldier Field at the Chicago Catholic League Championship. It was a high school game, and I believe there were 130,000 people there, and I think every one of them had a hat on their head, looking at the picture.
Right.
And really, when you drove, they built the Soldier Field that I played in right inside of the old one, and they kind of sectioned off one end of it, so that the stadium wasn't an oval shape. It was flat on one end and oval on the other. It wasn't very tall. It could have been more than a couple stories tall, so it was really flat, very little slope to it. It was a very, very bad place to see a football game. I believe half the seats were end zone seats. Mm-hmm. And where we pulled in and parked to go to the locker room was part of the old stadium. You could see the old bleachers and everything else from back in the 30s. So it had turf. I remember it had AstroTurf, and then when they went to grass, and I don't think I've ever been there where the grass has been in great shape. This time of year, they'll let it grow long. I mean, the city runs that stadium, maintains that stadium. They have a lot of games there, soccer, football, and it sees a lot of use. So it's never pristine or ideal conditions, but I don't think there's anything different about the fans, except for whatever reason, going to Chicago, they love to give you the middle finger. You'll see more middle fingers on your way in on the bus. When you go to Chicago, when you go to Philly, usually get stuff thrown at you. There's little things that the fans like to do depending on where you go, but the fans aren't that bad in Chicago at all. So it's hard to put a finger on what the problem is and why that place has been so hard for the Vikings to win in. And so I really can't point to anything physical other than the fact that it's grass and it's outside. But we play outside now, so that's kind of no longer an excuse.
I feel bad for you because I know how sensitive of a guy you are to get that middle finger shot at you when you're going. That must have been tough for you.
No, it was lovely because I remember being a young kid, 8, 9 years old, flipping off the other buses when they came in. So it's a rite of passage in Chicago.
I hear you. Well, I got to ask you this. If the fans from the Twin Cities head down to Chicago to see the game this weekend, what should they get if they go to your favorite Burrito Villa eatery?
It is. It's in Summit. It's on First Avenue in Archer. And I always get the double beef, no beans, sour cream on the side. That's what you get. And then you can get RC Cola on tap, all for like $5.
And why is it so special? Why is it so much better than going somewhere else?
It's my father grew up near there. My cousin and I would spend a couple weeks with her every summer, and we would go there a lot. And when I got older and when I was in high school and kids could drive, they always talked about this Burritoville place. And I'm like, well, take me there. So we went. And sure enough, it was the place I've been going to since I was little. But it's open 24 hours. 2 in the morning, there'll be a line out the door. It's in a little bit of a sketchy neighborhood, so it's just it's what Chicago's all about. But obviously, the food is fantastic. You get a burrito that's the size of your head, and nothing like that at 3 a.m. to sit in your gut when you wake up.
I hear you. Well, fans will certainly have to try that. And, we talked about Soldier Field being that house of horrors, and it's Halloween weekend, and you played in a Halloween game in 1999 when the Vikings beat the Broncos in Denver. It was late on a field goal, 23-20. This is that game that Leroy Horde talked to you and I about, where he went 53 yards on a draw play where it was 3rd and 37. But what do you recall about a Halloween game like that?
Not a whole lot. I think the best is when when you play the day after Halloween. Kind of like what we're doing now. And so you get to go out a little bit on Saturday night and see the sights and see all the, Halloween it's kind of like it's been hijacked by adults. Either that or we just never grew out of it, our generation. Mm-hmm. It's for the kids, but it seems like they just take them to malls now and let them, trick or treat around the mall. And then the parents go out that night in their outfits and, have at it. So it just seems there's a generation of people that are my age that just never really grew out of it.
And it's changed a lot because getting off the track of Halloween a bit. When we were kids, we were a lot more creative. So we'd go out and we'd create our own scavenger hunt, and it was always amazing what we put on the list for ourselves. We put cigarettes and beer and things like that. See, is anybody going to give us this stuff?
Right. Those were the days. I mean, and it wasn't probably too uncommon. For kids to do that back in those times.
Yep.
We would just go for hours, and we didn't have to stay in the neighborhood. We'd go wherever we wanted. I mean, it's just a different time. Yeah. And I'm glad that I was that age at that time. I don't know if you'd enjoy it as much these days.
Well, you talk about adults not growing out of it. If you think back on Halloween, everybody always says, what was that favorite costume you had? I want to try something different and see if it even spurs any thoughts in you. What was either the worst or the most embarrassing costume you had to put on?
Oh my God, I couldn't remember. I don't know if I could tell you. We would just put camouflage on, paint our faces, and then go out all night and do just mischievous stuff, so to speak.
So you
get ourselves in a fair amount of trouble.
Or two feet?
No, I would never admit to a federal crime. Never. Well, no, yeah. I mean, what's more fun than blowing stuff up? And on Halloween, it's expected. So
I can't argue with that.
As upset.
I remember my kid coming to me on Halloween and saying, I've carved out part of this pumpkin. Can we stick some firecrackers in and see if we can blow the holes out? I like the thought. Yeah, or you can drop them off a bridge onto cars or trucks or all kinds of stuff. But I don't endorse any of that. I would never endorse any of that kind of thing. Right. I just heard about it. Yeah, so there's the disclaimer for the kids watching out there and the parents with them. This is not something you want to do. It's only for Pete and the professionals. As we turn back to the game this weekend, the Vikings got to be brimming with confidence after that second thrashing of the Lions last week. And give us your impressions of how the team looked to you after they were lethargic early on defense and then just pummeled the Lions. I think early on, as you mentioned, I don't necessarily say lethargic. I think it was one of those things where Detroit had a good game plan and they came out and they executed it perfectly. And what was nice to see is that the Vikings responded, and defensively they responded by getting aggressive and blitzing. And for the coaching staff, it's a great way of doing that. You see a guy like Kendricks, who's been walking up in the A gap on third down situations all year and never went, and they had shown that so much that the coach, the offensive line didn't even acknowledge him, and so he gets in there and gets a sack before the quarterback Stafford can even get to the top of his drop. So it's a great combination of being aggressive and changing the mentality, because they were reactive early. We'd only given up 3 points in the first quarter all year, and so to give up 2 touchdowns right out the gate, I mean that's a tough one to handle. But I got to hand it to them. They did well. I mean, you win games on the road with veteran leadership, and this is a young team, but they had plenty of guys step up, and it was great. It was just, you get after Stafford, you get him on the ground, you're going to win. Yeah. And they did exactly that. It's interesting. I want to kind of draw back on your coaching experience in the NFL. And, fans for years, when it was under Leslie Frazier, we always say, why don't we make any adjustments? And I'm curious from a coaching standpoint, how do you make the adjustments? What do you see either on, the Polaroids that are coming down or the faxes that are coming down? What do you see, and how do you make those adjustments so quick? Yeah, sometimes you see formations and personnel groups that
that are unique or different that you haven't seen, and then you just want to make sure that your checks are okay. I would say what Willie Shaw used to say, but it's a little bit colorful, but they coach the same guys that we coach, right? Mm-hmm. And so they can't change an entire offensive game plan in a week. So they switch it around. If you have a 3 wide receiver look, one week they'll motion to it, one week they'll shift to it, and the other week they'll line up in it. But the concepts and the patterns are all pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. And if there's a certain route that's giving you problems in a certain coverage, then you cover that. Make sure everybody's alignment is correct. Make sure that everybody is where they're supposed to be pre-snap, because you only get 2 pictures. You get one right before the ball snapped, and then one just literally a second or so after the ball snaps, so you can kind of see what's going on. And I know that they've talked about, and they don't even have paper anymore. They have the Surface, the pads, the Microsoft pads, and I know they've talked about letting these guys watch video. I know in hockey you can watch video in between periods and things like that, and I really think that would be a bad thing for football. Because so much happens that you don't even realize until you watch tape the next day. And for coaches that can see things on the sideline, it's a huge advantage. And it would take a lot out of coaching and minimize a lot of talent in coaching if they did go to video.
You look at that, is it the defensive coordinator who ultimately makes the switches on defense, or do they allow it to the personnel groups?
No, it's the coordinator. The coordinator for sure is the one that goes through everything and makes sure that it fits and that he's doing things the right way. Coordinators have offenses broken down in a million different ways as far as personnel groups and down and distance and tendencies. 1st and 10 after a first down, 21 personnel. They run the ball 80% of the time, and it's almost too much. You can almost get too much and learn too much by listening and by having too much. That's why those flip cards are so big, because there's just so much information on it. And the challenge is getting that information to your players. It's, everything, but your players don't know anything, and it is of no value. Yeah. But the coordinators are the ones that are left to make those decisions.
All right. Well, I know you're bashful with language, so I'll make sure we go offline and you can tell me what Willie Shaw said.
Absolutely.
Hey, last week you made a pretty uncanny prediction before the game that Blair Walsh might get 5 field goals, and God, you proved Nostradamus like, because that's exactly what he got. But what are you seeing out on the field, Pete, that's making him struggle so much with that new 37-yard extra point?
I'm not sure. He's mentioned, I don't know kicking, and I don't plan on ever knowing kicking or having anything to do with it. But he just mentioned timing of his kick, that he's going too fast. He needs to slow down. Who knows? I do know, or I can tell, that when he's missing, he's mishitting. He's not necessarily pulling the ball or pushing the ball. It's a mishit, and so the ball has way too much spin on it. And I'm not sure. He's got to figure it out for field goals, but not for extra points, which makes little or no sense. So
it's got to be pretty lonely out there, huh?
Yeah, it does. Kickers, they're a different breed. They're like pitchers in baseball or goalies in hockey. They just, even when he does well and does what he did, and then, people talk about Stephon Diggs, people talk about everybody else but the kicker. You seem to only notice them when things don't go well. But that's life in the big city. They don't go home feeling sore. They may get sore from using their leg or whatever, but they're not out there getting, their bodies beaten into a pulp every week. So, I'll take it. So, yeah. Well, it's just it's so mental, and if you don't have that about you, then it can destroy you. It can really be a challenge. So those guys are unique. They're different. Most people just leave them alone. They don't talk to them, and that's really it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You hit it right on the head. Everybody's talking about Stephon Diggs, and 3 games in a row. And what I wondered from you is, from game planning, really playing against type receivers, or being a coach and coaching against receivers like that. Is this something that the defenses haven't learned to game plan for him yet, or what do you see on the field that says he's the real deal? He's going to be hard to cover for anybody.
He's just really smooth. One of the biggest misconceptions is that speed is everything at wide receiver, and it's not. It's knowing what you're supposed to do, your responsibilities, and then technique. And you can use your brain. You can really take advantage of situations, defenses, and just do more if you're a smart player, believe it or not. And I think he's a little bit of all that. He's definitely fundamentally sound. He runs really nice routes, and just because he doesn't have the 4.4 speed, he got drafted low, and amazingly, he's 62 yards from what Cordero Patterson did last year, all of last year. So the productivity's there, and that catch that he made against Detroit was a thing of beauty. You watch that replay, and Teddy threw that thing up there, and he just went into another gear and then laid out, and it was an absolutely beautiful catch. And that's how quarterbacks gain trust in receivers. Next deep ball that Teddy wants to throw after he's scrambling, you know where it's going to go. It's going to go to Diggs. We saw that with Brett Favre back in the day with Sidney Rice. I mean, Sidney Rice was not average, but he was just a guy. And then Favre built a rapport with him and made him his go-to guy, and he responded. So the quarterback and the receiver relationship is very, very important.
It is, and I'll tell you, the guy who gets targeted a lot is Mike Wallace, but a lot of it's on slants and short stuff, and he's got this great reputation for speed and going deep. Any idea why we don't see him more on routes beyond 15 yards right now?
I just don't think that's kind of running. I mean, since his rookie year, which I believe was 2008, he's caught more 20-plus yard touchdown passes than anybody else in the league. So, yeah, he's a big play guy. But it's just not the way this offense operates. I mean, he was in Pittsburgh with Roethlisberger. It was a block it up and throw the ball deep off of play action, things like that. We just don't do that. We don't have a two-back offense. And so the scheme is a little different. But he's been very good underneath as far as percentages, and I know he did let one, I think, get away from him last week, but he's been pretty sure-handed for a guy who was kind of knocked for it, so to speak, before we signed him.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what, the last question on the Vikings I want to ask you about is over on the defensive side. You and I had a couple of conversations with Gerald Hodges, and then he got traded to the 49ers. A lot of fans were really kind of upset about that. He's a good linebacker, maybe not a starting middle linebacker, but maybe on the outside. But now we see Eric Kendricks, and he's made fans completely forget about Hodges. Pete, what is it about Kendricks when you see him on the field or in film that makes him look like no middle linebackers we've had since maybe E.J. Henderson in his prime?
Well, I'd tell you what, one of the things is the way he hustles. I mean, when Kansas City threw that little whip screen for a touchdown, the only guy that entered the film with a purple jersey was Kendricks. I mean, he chased that receiver all the way down. He missed a running back in man-to-man coverage against Detroit. It was about a 30-some yard play, but he almost caught back into it. He never gives up, and his effort level is elite. He works harder and runs to the ball more, I think, than anybody else on that defense. And, that alone is huge. That alone is going to make you better at linebacker, because a lot of times it's see ball, get ball. And with guys like Linval Joseph in front of them, those guys can eat up two people. And then the young man could just go ahead and run the ball. I mean, people talk about his ability to get off blocks, but, when you're not getting guys up to the second level, then you just running the ball.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, he's been impressive, no doubt. And as we turn to the other parts of the league, I wanted to ask you about a couple of former Vikings that have changed addresses. And the first one is that off-injured, much maligned Percy Harvin in Buffalo. And Pete, it sounds like he's out again this week for the Bills with an undisclosed injury. From your perspective, why can't a guy like this stay on the field? He has so many different ailments or hard disputes with his teammates. What's going on there?
It's hard to say. It's hard to speculate. Since they haven't been around him for quite some time, but he had the injury bug coming out of college, and it's kind of stayed with him, and it's just odd because they're not hamstrings and things; it's hips and those kinds of injuries that have affected him. So, staying healthy and being healthy is a characteristic, just like height, like weight, like speed. And I remember Chuck Barta, the old trainer for the Vikings, would always say, take a look at a kid's college career, and if he misses 2-3 games a year, he's going to do the same in the NFL. I think it holds true for Harvin as well. You got to find a way to stay healthy, and he just hasn't been able to. So unfortunately, durability's been a problem for him. And he when he was playing for us, he wasn't afraid to take a hit. He wasn't afraid to run a guy over. He was a very physical receiver, as a guy that could even play running back. And those hits add up. Especially if you're not built like Adrian Peterson or some other guys like that. So I think those hits have added up and built up on him, and the body's falling apart.
Yeah, as you turn over to Dallas, the Cowboys kind of pinned their hopes on former Viking quarterback Matt Cassel to at least give him a win or two before Tony Romo comes back in a few weeks. But, Matt looked a lot like he did with us last season when he played the Giants, kind of up and down, forcing passes, at the worst possible times. I'm curious, Pete, can Matt help the Cowboys stay relevant until Romo comes back?
I think so. It may take him a couple weeks, but he's a good solid quarterback, makes good decisions. He may not be able to wow you, but smart kid, smart guy. I remember what he did out in London when we played Pittsburgh and got us our first win that year. And when he started playing, he built up a nice rapport with Jennings, and they kind of went from there. So very capable backup, and he was a starter in this league, and I think he has a chance. I think. He's, like I said, smart enough with the ball that he can figure those things out.
Yeah, well, staying in Dallas, they had their off-season acquisition of defensive end Greg Hardy, and he's had a bunch of history of anger off the field, and now he got into an altercation last week with one of the Cowboys coaches during the Giants game. And Pete, did you have any thoughts when Cowboy owner Jerry Jones came out and defended him and offered no disciplinary action whatsoever? Isn't he just enabling him for a bigger blow-up down the road?
It depends on the situation, but the owner owns the team. He doesn't necessarily run the team. He's not the head coach, and when you take a guy like that and have the owner say something like that, then does it enable him a little bit? Yeah, I think so. You see the same kind of thing with the Redskins. I think a lot with the Snyder and that ownership. They kind of just let those guys, do whatever. Al Davis, I remember Napoleon Harris telling me that Al would come up to him and ask him, how's your coach screwing you up today, Napo, and stuff like that. And you can't, if you do that, the player just looks and says, well, the owner likes me. He's the guy who makes all the decisions, so I could tell this coach to go get bent, or I could, complain about certain things or feel entitled to certain things. And it's a bad atmosphere. I mean, they can cause a lot more harm than good. And I think that's sort of the situation there. I mean, let the head coach handle it. If someone needs to be disciplined, hand it out. But arguing on the sideline, I mean, is that really a big deal? I mean, we've seen it. Remember Terrell Owens throwing tirades on the sideline, and there have been a lot of players that have done that, walked off fields early. I mean, so you just kind of deal with it as you go. And for him, because of his past, he's going to attract a lot more attention. And that's just the way it is.
It's a fun job being a coach in the NFL, no doubt. And, they got a similar issue. It's more of an off-field issue in Cleveland with quarterback Johnny Manziel. And he might get the start this weekend in Arizona due to Josh McCown's injury. But Manziel, he's also being investigated by the league for an alleged domestic abuse issue while he was intoxicated. Now, from your playing days or from your coaching days, how does an active investigation like that affect both the player and his teammates? Is it a big distraction?
For the player, I would say yes. I mean, you have an investigation going on, and you have to deal with all those things that are just not football related. I mean, you're attracting attention to yourself, and you're causing, your self-concern on something that's just so unnecessary. For the rest of the players, not really. I mean, you look at the fact that somebody may be gone, or someone may get suspended or kicked off the team. I mean, that's definitely affecting. But if they're there, the players, they're not really into everybody else's business, so to speak. And obviously, they're probably more accepting than in some ways than most atmosphere. But yeah, for the rest of the locker room, I don't necessarily think it's a distraction at all. But for the player himself, yeah, absolutely. And it's a waste because it's just so unnecessary. You know?
So maybe don't start Manziel in your fantasy league this week.
Yeah. You never know, man, with him. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's just amazing to me how some people just have to be the center of attention. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, this kid just always seems to work his way and find his way into the limelight.
Yeah,
you know?
Yep. Well, finally, if we look over in New England, no matter the controversy or any disciplinary action or any roster changes, this team is always a powerhouse. You were a coach, so tell me, what is it about Bill Belichick that makes him such a great game day coach who really creates unique game plans for each opponent he faces?
He is very innovative. You know, having interviewed with the Patriots for a linebacker position, and I was able to spend a good couple hours with him. Attention to detail is so huge with him and such a demand for his players. He understands the game is situational, and he's constantly covering situations with his players. And so they feel prepared whenever anything comes up. And he does have, he does have a gift. He has the ability to watch film and find things and figure out offenses and defenses pretty quickly. He's also very good at knowing how and where to fit guys in. He's taken a lot of low round picks and made good players out of them. And he's instilled leadership in them. I mean, Brady, say what you want, but the guy's a leader. I mean, he's not happy unless he's winning. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of hard to do when you're dealing with someone who's almost 40. I mean, what hasn't he done? And I think they have a unique relationship between the two of them, and he's inspired them. So it's a combination. It's just a smart football team. You don't see that team make a lot of dumb mistakes. You don't see that team make situational mistakes. Very well prepared. I saw the game plan that they had for the Super Bowl back earlier in the 2000s, and I mean they had 14 games of film broken down. I mean that's a lot because it takes a week to do about 3, mm-hmm. and they had 14 of them. No stone left unturned. Yeah. Very high attention to detail, and that's why they're successful. And they're not really apologetic for it either, so they don't care.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned that you sat down with him, interviewed for a linebacking coach job. I got to ask you, did you come away impressed with Belichick?
Oh, I came back. Yeah, I mean, Romeo Crennel was the defensive coordinator. Pepper Johnson was one of the linebacker coaches. Eric Mangini was the defensive backfield coach. Yeah, absolutely. It was a nerve-wracking time. I mean, you just sit in front of that audience or stand up in front of the board while all those guys sat around the table and asked you questions for a good hour and a half, 2 hours, however long that was. Yeah, you get a good feel for what these guys are like, but they were all really, really good guys, and they cover everything. Boy, I tell you, they don't leave any stones unturned, and that's exactly what they're trying to do and teach their players. So it's definitely a good system. Hard to recreate. We've seen a lot of Belichick disciples go out in the league and become head coaches, mm-hmm. And not have that same kind of success. Bill Belichick himself, he started to have a little success in Cleveland, and then the team moved. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as if he didn't have a few spurts and stutters before he finally got to New England and everything kind of worked his way.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Pete, we've got a lot of unique guests already lined up to talk with us through the remainder of the year. And I wanted to close our program tonight by mentioning just a few of them and getting your first thought on what you would want to know from them. So are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. Next week, we get legendary Viking coach Bud Grant. What's the first thing you want to ask him?
Oh, my gosh. I want to know what he thinks of the game today. I want to know if he thinks the game today is better than what it was, and are we past the peak? And just kind of his thoughts on the league today and the state that it's in.
Okay. Former Super Bowl quarterback Rich Gannon comes to us in December. What do you want to know from Rich?
Well, from Rich, I want to know with his analyst role with CBS. I think I would probably want to ask him more of what he likes in the booth and what he does in the booth, and being in a Super Bowl, and I mean, I would even ask him about the deal that he and Brad Johnson had when they scuffed up the football for the Super Bowl, both of them together. It's been public; they talked about it in the paper years ago. So. Yeah. Inflategate would be, or Deflategate, excuse me, would have been a pretty good topic for him, but I think that one's pretty much talked out.
Okay. Well, we've also got former Purple People Eater defensive lineman Bob Lertzema, Carl Eller, and Jim Marshall coming right before Thanksgiving. What do you want to know from them?
I want to know from Lertzema, I would like to know if he can even reach into his own back pocket to pull out his wallet. He's probably the shortest arm man I've ever seen. Okay. But what a great guy, Marshall. I think the big thing with him is he just never missed a game. And how does a guy go about doing that? Was it hard? Was it easy? Did you just not get hurt? I mean, you shake the man's hand. If he made a fist, it's the size of a person's head. Mm-hmm. So he's built like a Mack truck. And so is it just God's way of blessing him, or was there something else involved?
Yeah. And then we've also got running back greats Chuck Foreman and Roger Craig coming in November.
I'd like to know, from Chuck, I just would like to know what he thinks of both of them, actually, the future of the running back position. What's the future of the running back position? It seems to be a little less and less important every year, especially with teams passing the ball 60% of the time now, and do they think that that position will become extinct? Because the fullback almost already has. So is the running back next?
Yeah, I mean, it was strange enough this past weekend to see a sighting of Zach Lyme with the ball.
and Detroit actually had a fullback in the backfield. That was surprising. I mean, they don't do that much either. It's a specialty now. It's almost a rarity. So will the tailback be next?
Well, it's funny because, we were growing up, fullbacks would get 150, 200 carries a year.
No question about it.
Yeah.
And they also got a lot of passes. That's what the West Coast offense was about. It was about throwing the ball, and the fullbacks then had to block, but they also had to be able to catch. It wasn't as much important to be able to run the ball, but so that position evolved into a receiver, and now it just kind of evolved itself out of the league. Quarterbacks, they use deception, they use other things to try to make up for it. And teams are all spread out, extra wide receivers. So,
well, we've also got your former offensive coordinator Brian Billick coming in December.
Old Brian Billick. I would, I was a big pain in the ass on scout team. Having been on it for as long as I was, I knew all the checks and the calls and everything else, and it was just kind of funny that I drove him nuts, and I just like to know how badly I drove him crazy.
Okay. Now, we don't have a date yet, but we've got a confirmation that former Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach is coming. I know your dad was an original member of the Dallas Cowboys. What would you want to ask Roger Staubach?
Oh, my goodness. I'd ask him about the game that we talked about earlier with Rob Schneider, about the playoff game in San Francisco and some of his big wins. And,
okay.
That kind of thing.
All right. And finally, late this year, a really unusual guest. We're scheduled to have former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson coming here. What do you want to know from Iron Mike?
Oh, my God. I don't know. I think you just ask him a question and let him go. Let him talk. But he was so big and such a celebrity back when I was in college in the early 90s. And everything would stop when he fought. Mm-hmm. And just what, again, with boxing is boxing going away, and MMA, and what's changed and what's going to continue to be great, and is there going to be another great American heavyweight?
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, with Mike, you and I have a challenge because the censors are going to be active during his conversation.
Yeah. Let him go, man. Just let him go.
He will be fun.
That's the beauty of it. Just let him go.
And, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Pete Bursage's Viking Mail Call. And don't forget to check out all of Pete's interviews. They're all posted on Pete's website at PeteBFootball.com, and follow Pete on Twitter at Pete Bursage. And then remember, everybody, next week we're going to be with our guest, Hall of Fame coach Bud Grant. So until then, for Pete Bursage, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.